it's disintegrated to a point that makes me long for the days when we just had landline.
It takes a team, I will tell you that.
I would be violently crying.
The stark contrast is most kids are not playing outside. They're
Welcome to another episode of Message from Mom, where we're busting the myth that mothers-in-law aren't necessarily monsters-in-law. And this is a podcast where we mix a little generational wisdom with today's trends and current events. And you know, the older I get, the more I reflect on the lessons my parents passed down to me. Lessons that, funny enough, are still shaping the way I look at the world, even in the middle of all the modern chaos. My mom had a knack of simplifying the big questions, always reminding me of what really mattered. While my dad, he had this steady presence, like a compass, that kept us pointed in the right direction. Together, they made parenting seem like a delicate balance of guidance, love, and a little tough love when needed. But parenting today, it feels like a whole different ballgame. My mom and dad didn't have to deal with social media, helicopter parenting, debates, or the constant pressure to do it all right, just like Pinterest perfect. And yet, some of the core lessons they taught, like the importance of family, boundaries, and showing up for the people you love, still resonate so deeply even in today's world. So today, I thought we would take a little trip down memory lane, comparing parenting then and now. What's changed? What stayed the same? And what can we learn from the way our parents parented, whether we're raising kids, grandkids, or simply trying to navigate relationships in our lives? So grab your coffee or tea and let's get into it. Because if there's one thing I know, it's that the lessons from yesterday still have plenty to teach us today.
And I'm joined by my lovely co-hosts who happen to be my daughters-in-law. And I have Kelly to the left of me.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I'm married to Beth's oldest son, Alex.
And Chelsea to the right.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, and I'm married to Beth's middle son, Andrew.
And for those of you who have not heard the good news, so Chelsea is expecting her first baby in May.
I am.
And so that's going to make me a grandmother, although I'm going to be a BB because that's my first name starts with a B. So that's why I decided that I would be a BB. So we actually thought it would be a nice time to talk about parenting and how it's changed through the ages. And we do have foundational pieces. We do try to anchor our conversations on articles, or maybe it's even like over on YouTube or an expert. So these are the foundational pieces. And those of you on YouTube, you can find those in the description box. But we have Parenting in America today. And this is by Rachel Minkin and Juliana Menasce Horowitz for the Pew Research Center. We also have Parenting Today versus the Past, and that is from Mother Magazine. Raising Kids Then and Now, and that is from it's called troomy.com. And then we also have How Parenting Today is Harder and Different, and that is from the New York Times. So again, that's all linked down below. So let's kick it off. So I know, as I introduced in my monologue, things have changed from my mother's generation, even to my generation, and then now to you.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, when I was a kid growing up, and it was funny because I was actually just talking to someone my age, and we were actually having this conversation. What were our mothers doing inside? Because they were stay-at-home mothers, but they would kick us out of the house. We were not underfoot at all.
Mm-hmm.
Way back in the day, in the 60s and the 70s. And so we would just be on our Schwinn bikes and we would be roaming around the neighborhood and all of that. But we were laughing with this conversation because it was like, I never stopped to think what my mom was doing all day long. I just knew that I couldn't be underfoot. So
I was always outside, but I don't think my mom kicked me out of the house. I just was always out playing with the neighborhood kids.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
We lived on a cul-de-sac, so we'd ride our bikes and we'd race around. And I was always coming home with I remember, I would walk in the door and just be completely covered in dirt. My mom would just be like, "What did you do?"
Yeah.
Head up to the bath
Yeah.
right now. ASAP. But so, even when I was raising the boys, I would allow them to go outside. That was really when we were starting to be a little bit more fearful about letting our children play outside. But I do think one of the big differences between my generation and what you'll be faced with. I mean, I will be curious to see if you will let uh baby D play outside in the neighborhood, or would it be like more contained, like in your backyard type of
Well, it
environment?
definitely, with where we live and how our house sits, it definitely have to be a backyard outside. But we have a clubhouse that's, I mean, it's a quick drive. And there's like a playground and lots of outdoor space. So we can always go up there. I mean, hopefully she'll make friends with people in the neighborhood that maybe have a bigger, flatter backyard or a better front yard than us.
Right.
But probably not at the front yard, just because the way
Well,
our
it's so steep. Yes.
it's so steep, and then we kind of live. I mean, we live in a neighborhood, but our the road that's in front of our house is pretty busy,
right as well.
and just windy and curvy. So that'd be a little dangerous, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, headed off to the park, things like that. So
For sure, yeah.
but you will be supervising. So I mean, I
Yeah.
think the
You
big
mean like
big change, like from when I was growing up.
you just went out by yourself?
Yes, we had no supervision at all. It was just
Yeah.
like, I mean, and literally my mom was
that's kind
kicking
of-
us out of the house. It was like, okay.
Yeah. We never really had supervision. I mean, I would all the time go out in our neighborhood with, I mean, we'd just be in our neighborhood, but we'd go rollerblading and biking and, I mean, my mom never worried, about
your safety or anything like that.
I mean, even if I was by myself and I was just rollerblading alone in our neighborhood, my mom never really worried,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was probably more worried that I was going to break a bone on the rollerblades than actually anyone else was going to bother me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Just your own physical safety.
my own physical safety caused by myself.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do think that, there again, the stark contrast is most kids are not playing outside. They're inside and they're on their online
Oh,
devices.
For sure.
And so I was really, so that also struck me too, in a couple of the articles that I did read and was talking about this, is that it's never really been safer in America to be outside unsupervised. It's actually, statistics point that out. But what is not safe actually is being online, because there are online predators. That you could be cyberbullied. You could have, I mean, if you have too much access to social media accounts, you can also be facing that, ostracism too. Like, oh, and this is actually when children get older, they're more in their teens. Oh, so and so, oh, they had a party, I wasn't invited. So you have all of that going on as well. So
Yeah.
I think there's far more ways to be harmed online than outside playing on your
Yeah.
own.
We were just
Which
talking
is
about
interesting.
this last night. Actually, I was at dinner with Andrew and another couple, and they have a 1.5-year-old, and they brought him to dinner last night. Brock is his name, and he's super cute, but they don't you can't really call him like an iPad kid, because they don't bring the iPad to dinner. They obviously bring, coloring stuff and stickers and things to keep him entertained while they're having dinner. But it's more so keeping him entertained without,
The screen.
without the screen. And they made comments of this, and I think Andrew and I can agree to this, but we really don't want to have an iPad kid. Like, we'll obviously still go to dinner, but, our baby D is going to have to learn how to entertain herself, with stickers or whatever we bring. And, there probably will be dinners where she has some tantrums and we're going to have to get up and
Some meltdowns, yes.
some meltdowns. And honestly, Brock last night, he had like a few, like he had like 1 or 2 moments where, but I think it was just, he got excited, you know what I mean? So he made a loud noise, but he was honestly great the whole dinner. And we were just talking
I've met him.
about-
He's a very good-natured baby.
He's very good natured, but we were just talking about how
Not all babies are that good-natured.
no, how we just don't want to, because you'll see parents out with their kids, and it's almost like, sure, the parents are having a great dinner and they're having a great conversation, but what are you really doing for your kid there?
Right.
You know?
Right.
I Yeah, I agree. I think there's certain restaurant situations that are good to bring kids to expose them to adult scenarios, even when they are very young.
Yeah.
When I was back in the early 2000s, I was a nanny for a number of years
Mhm.
to a 3-year-old. And so this was before, like I had a cell phone, but it was a flip phone, so screens weren't a part of kids' lives, toddlers' lives like they
Right.
are now.
Right.
But I would take him, the parents would give me, a certain amount of money every day to like go out and do stuff with the kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, you know, eventually we would have to go get lunch or something. And I would never hesitate to take him to a nice place to go have lunch.
Mm-hmm.
We would spend a lot of time in Chinatown and Japantown and just going to restaurants where you normally wouldn't see a toddler or whatever. And basically just like teaching him how to, sit at a table and be a big boy and eat properly with a fork or chopsticks and, just be able to like manage himself and not have a meltdown. And sure enough, like, because we'd be there for lunch, so it'd be quiet for the most part. And always the waitresses would come over and just fawn all over him and just, he's so good and he's so sweet. And they would bring him extra little things and stuff. And so I think having that doting and that reward for handling himself very well and being, a grown up little, 3-year-old, like he actually, he really enjoyed it, and he really loved those experiences when we would go out to lunch together. And, so yeah, I think there's a time and a place for sure for that, and mitigating your kid with the screen at the restaurant is not the way to teach them how to properly act in
No.
a restaurant.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
So,
Right. But I am curious. So, the couple that you went to dinner with, did they ever get babysitters, or do they ever go out?
Sometimes their parents will watch him, but for the most part, honestly, they do bring Brock. I think every dinner that I've gone to with them, Brock has come. And I mean, we had dinner, I think it started at 6:30 last night and we ended about 8:15. So, it was a little bit later of a dinner. I mean, towards the end, it was starting to be his bedtime. I think you could tell he was getting a little tired, but he did really well considering. And, I mean, I think the parents that they have that live close by, they also go back and forth to Florida, so they're not always in Georgia. So it's probably going to be a similar situation to me and Andrew, where sometimes if we can't find a babysitter, if we want to go out to eat, the only option will to bring baby D with us.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So, because we actually had a segment on this several months ago, which was about alone time or me time. And if you're watching on YouTube, so Oscar is down here with us and he is being very needy. He's being very needy right now.
He knows we're talking about parenting.
That's right. And he's definitely being, not very well behaved at all. But I was just going to ask you, because I know many parents are very against getting babysitters. They don't really want to trust their child in someone else's hands. So do you believe that you will be that type of parent, or would you be open to having babysitters, outside of, I will be very happy to, come and watch baby D, and I know Kitty would too, but we don't live in the same city. So it's not as easy for us. That really has to be very planned. So do you plan on getting some babysitters or?
Oh, for sure. I'm open to babysitters. Obviously, especially as she gets a little older, but I think too, I would just need to make sure that they're qualified and, make sure that there's someone that I trust. But I teach Pure Barre one morning a week normally, and my gosh, I have probably 5 million babysitters through the high schoolers that do the desk.
That's
that would probably be willing to come over and babysit.
Yes.
So I've got a lot of people that I probably could choose from,
That's
if I need someone.
Yeah.
Because I do think it's important. As you pointed out, Kelly, I think it's very important to train your children to be able to go out to a restaurant, to be able to sit, to be able to participate in the conversation, things like that. But that really is a learning curve. And I just remember as a young mom, so we would start off at McDonald's. McDonald's was a big, the big play date.
Yeah.
But even that could be challenging because they wouldn't want to leave. They'd throw a tantrum. They're, whatever was going on in their day. We definitely had our ups and downs, but then, and then we would take them out to, I mean, Mac was in the hotel business, so that was very easy. We would go to dinner at the hotel. So that was a very built-in
I already know
environment.
that I'm going to have definitely probably the first meltdown that baby D has out in public.
Yeah.
Because me and Andrew and I are the same in the sense that we don't like to cause mass chaos around us. And I just already know that we're both going to be like, oh, dear God.
I know.
Just put me in a hole now.
That's right. It happens. But I also hope you're the parent, because there's and we see this all the time, where parents don't physically remove their child from the environment. And so then it impacts everybody around them. And I was always very cognizant of that. Is like, if the boys did start to act up, I would get up and I would physically remove them, because I was very sensitive to other people around me.
Okay. Well, yeah.
You have to be, because they're paying, they're out trying to enjoy their evening, and you cannot subject them to, to your child acting up. So
Absolutely. Sure.
And you may be missing half the dinner, I mean, I can remember days like that too, where it's just like, bye, sweetie, we'll see if we can come back. And sometimes you could come back, you could calm them down and then come back.
Well, on the same note of that is when you go to and I've talked about this in the last parenting, I think it was a technology and kids podcast that we did, where the next worst thing, or maybe on the same level of a kid having a meltdown in a very public way, ruining everyone else's, time in a restaurant, for instance. The other thing that's just right up there with that is the screens, because I've seriously been in restaurants where they're not silently watching the iPad.
They're watching it like full
volume,
right.
full volume. And it's just kind of like, I cannot believe that we came out to dinner and I have to listen to Bluey or something.
Yes.
Or, it's like, what is going on? How do
No, I
people
agree.
think that they can just treat a restaurant like their living room in that kind of way? That's just like so impactful to everyone else around.
Yeah.
It's like, so the self-awareness, I think, is just completely left.
And just common sense and manners have just gone out the window, because yes, and you sort of very eloquently, they're treating their restaurant just like their own living room, and it's not. This is a special environment for everyone that chooses to go, and they're
there's
actually
people
paying.
working, and there's people that need to work, and like it's very distracting, and it can be very just
For
bad
sure.
for
And
everyone.
And that's why I was also very big with babysitters too, and that was also my Nana, and she was a pediatric nurse, and she shared with me very early on that I needed to train the boys that I was going to leave. And then I was going to come back, because otherwise you're just setting them up for separation anxiety. So when they get to be old enough, I mean, I wasn't getting a babysitter when AJ was 3 months old. I mean, it took a while. I think he was probably about 9 months old or closer to a year. And I can remember Mac almost had a meltdown because he wanted wanted to have all the credentials, who is this person?
I know.
Funny.
I mean, I'll probably.
And at that point, I'm like, who cares?
You're
they're
like, I need to get out of the house.
Body.
Yeah. You just ask them, do you know how to dial a phone?
Yeah.
All right, we're good.
I
babysitters are important too.
No, I 100% agree. I don't remember growing up. Maybe my Nana and Papa just babysat me, when I was really little before we moved up to Georgia. But so I don't really remember babysitters per se, but I do remember my mom. I was in daycare from like a very young age because my mom and my dad both worked. And both of their jobs did not allow me to be there with them. So she'd have to put me in daycare. So I do remember that. And typically I feel like I was pretty good going to daycare, but there was one that I do remember I would cry every time we would go there. And finally, cause I'm not, I wasn't like one to do that. And finally my mom was like, what is going on at this daycare? And I think there was like some weird stuff going on, but she was like, no, we're going to a different daycare.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I would just I would be violently crying like on the way every day. And I think that is one of those moments where maybe as a parent, you do need to step back and be like, okay, maybe this isn't,
Well, especially if it's a sudden change or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think one of the really interesting things about the teaching your kid the self-reliance aspect, and I know it comes in a lot of forms, whether it's teaching them to console themselves when they're bedtime, teaching them that you're going to come home when you go away, basically getting them to teach themselves how to console themselves and to entertain themselves and be okay. I think that one of the biggest differences, just, I'm not a parent, but just in my experience of being of a generation when we didn't have a lot of like things given to us to like mediate and soothe us. So for instance, our parents kicking us out of the house on the weekend. Don't come back until the sun goes down. I don't want to see your face in here until the sun goes. You know what I mean? Like that kind of stuff. It teaches you as a kid, like how to be self-reliant and kind of responsible for your activities and whatever. So you kind of learn a little bit something there. With a lot of that kind of thing going away and parents being helicopter parents, you know, beginning in the 2000s, and there being this kind of sense of like, the kids go to school, they have so much homework, we're preparing them for life. All of the outside activities that they do are mediated by us in the sense of like, we're putting them in soccer, we're putting them in baseball, we're putting them in football, they're going to dance, they're going to
every
basketball,
minute is
yeah.
accounted for, and their
Right.
schedules are so busy and so overloaded
Right. So
sometimes.
it doesn't seem like a surprise that we get to a point now where that little generation had that moment of being completely directed. Like from the moment they wake up until the moment they go to bed, their day is completely directed by not necessarily themselves. So all of those kids now are in this moment where they're moving back home with their parents. And I realize the economy has something to do with this, but the idea that it's just so easy to like kind of go back and live with your parents. And I'm not saying that it is for everyone, but even that being a resource is a relatively new in the way that it is now, where you just kind of have this turnover of like less self-reliance, maybe, is in a lot of ways, I guess, is what I'm thinking of. The snowflake culture, the kind of inability to sort of like see something through.
Well,
You know,
they don't
just
even want to
this-
get their license now, I feel like.
No,
They don't want to
don't.
drive
'Cause
cars.
they've got Ubers, they've got Lyft, you know,
They don't
which
care
is
about dating. They don't. I mean, there's just
Yeah.
so many things that are really different, and I can't help but wonder if some of those instincts that they have is part and parcel to the fact that they grew up with this completely directed childhood. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't even know if I'm onto something, but I can't help but feel like there's some correlation between like not ever having much opportunity to just kind of like try to be resourceful on your own
Right.
and like
you never
figure
have to
stuff
figure
out.
anything out
Yeah.
and
for
everyone's
themselves.
on like Lexapro or some sort of
That's the other thing.
antidepressant, which I'm just like, it's like, I'm not saying that these drugs don't need to be used for certain people, but I'm like, do we all need to be on them? Like, why is everyone on them?
The percentage of people on
That seems a little weird.
anxiety medicine,
Yeah.
antidepressants,
Yeah.
it really is quite astounding.
Well,
Yeah.
and are these anxieties coming from the fact that they just can't cope with being on their own? Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like, so you've had your life completely like managed,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go off to college, and it's just, I mean, that culture shock I think is probably more significant nowadays than it was, you know, 50 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, going off to
You know?
college. I mean, I remember going off to college and my first day, when my mom, I mean, me and my mom are like the Gilmore Girls. So when she dropped me off, I mean, that was we both cried. I think one of my good friends came and helped me and my mom move me in to my dorm. And then my friend texted me and she said, your mom cried the entire 3.5-hour
Oh,
drive
gosh.
home.
Yeah.
She literally, I mean, I cried when she left, but she literally cried all the way from Tuscaloosa back to Atlanta.
Wow.
Because she was just so, you
Yeah.
know, but yeah, it's definitely, that's a big change. That's probably the biggest
Yes.
change that someone has in their life.
Yes.
From,
And since
you
you were
know.
the only child, I mean, it
Yeah.
had much different parameters for Kitty. Like I
For
had
sure.
3, so you know when I dropped AJ off, I still had 2 at home.
yeah.
The family dynamics were different, but I wasn't, you know, completely an empty nester at that point.
Yeah.
So like your mom was. So
Yeah.
So that is interesting. But going back to what you were saying, Kelly, I do think that it's very important. And I just remember when the boys were little, I mean, and they would come to me like, "Oh, we're bored," and I'm like, "Well, good.
Yeah.
Guess what? You get to. If you're bored, let's figure out how to not be bored because I'm not going to be your,
Yeah.
you know, entertainment committee 24/7. You
Well,
guys,
sometimes you need to be bored.
you do.
How many times as an adult
Mhm.
do you sit there and think, I'm bored?
Mm-hmm.
it happens probably at least once a day.
No, it does not for me.
No,
I mean,
Kelly's too
you
busy.
know, like, you know what I mean? Like, you'll have like
Yeah.
a moment.
Mhm.
Even Andrew and I were talking about this the other day because he's like, I feel like I've just been on my screen,
Mhm.
like whether I'm watching TV or just scrolling on my phone. And he's like,
Mhm.
I'm feeling stir crazy.
Yeah.
Like I need to go and do something,
Mhm.
which doesn't really right now. I think that has more to do with it's winter,
And
right?
It's been a really
It's
cold
freezing
winter here.
outside.
We've had snow
Yeah.
days. We've had very unusual occurrences here in
Right.
Georgia that we normally don't have.
So, I mean, it's not like you're going to get outside and go for a walk or, you know, I mean, it's almost like you don't even want to go to dinner because you're so cold.
I know. I'm glad you said
Sure.
that because that's exactly how I felt last night. And I was like, no, I'm
Yeah.
not going out. I'm staying home.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
I guess I totally see what you mean in the sense of boredom, and I think the word boredom or the feeling of boredom for adults nowadays and even kids has just changed to screen.
Yeah.
You like the first moment of like an instance of boredom, and
Yeah.
you don't even recognize it as I'm bored. You just pick up your screen,
Yeah.
you know, and look at something. So yeah, I guess it's sort of maybe as a redefinition of boredom. But you know, one of the things that I always find really kind of funny to think about is so my cousin is a early childhood educator who's written a bunch of books and basically travels the United States and Canada giving lectures and conferences about early childhood education. And one of the things that she always talks about is playtime, and she's a maybe 6 or 8 years older than I am, but she had this funny campaign of like making it a point to photograph old playground equipment in places around the United States that actually still had old playground equipment, because there was this huge thing in the 90s where people's kids would get hurt doing stupid shit on metal playground equipment, and then the parents would try to sue the city.
Oh, really?
Right. So there was this huge reformation of city playgrounds where instead of just having whatever ground cover there was, it was all replaced with like super bouncy, like rubberized,
Oh, yeah.
asphalt
Yeah.
style ground, but it was like soft, right?
Yeah.
All the kinds of playground equipment was remade from, you know, being these metal structures to like being coated in whatever, and slides, things, it's all made of plastic. And, you know, so all of this, like, I remember all of this happening in the 90s. And, but it was just so fun because she had this whole photo series where she would, every city that she would go to, because she literally tours like 8 or 9 months a year. So every city that she goes to, she makes it a point to like find, you know, places that actually still have it. And it got me thinking, you know,
Is it hard for her to find?
it is now. It
That's right.
wasn't when she first, it wasn't as hard when she first started, but now it's impossible. And I think she actually abandoned the project because there was just, she couldn't find it anywhere. But you know, it kind of goes back to the whole kicking your kids out and letting them play outside and be up to their own devices for an entire day. It's like the idea that we can't, you know, that playground equipment is dangerous. We can't let our kids play on it. So they totally, you know, refurbish all of these things and reimagine how kids play.
yeah.
And then, you know, I don't know. There's something like uber protective, I think, that happened in like the 90s and through the 2000s that kind of went to.
Well, it was
a
my
point that-
generation. We started, I mean, we were the first helicopter parents, but I was kind of swimming against the tide because I actually saw that. And then we lived overseas for many years. So that really kind of removed us from the average American experience. But
Sure.
even before that, I was of the mindset, it's like, no, we will have play dates and you can have your friends come sleep over. And, you know, I was all on board with all of that, but I wasn't going to fill every single second of their day with an activity. And so I just made it a rule, you know, they could pick out one sport or, you know, or they could be in band or, you know, whatever it was, but it was going to be one thing that we were going to focus on, especially like at a time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I remember like my mom was never really, you would think me growing up being an only child that she would have been a helicopter parent, but I think because my mom was so busy, she didn't have the ability to be a helicopter mom because she had, you know, almost 2 full-time jobs. And even when her and my dad were still married, they were both busy. So, you know, I mean, I remember I used to do the craziest stuff that I think back, I would never in a million years do now. And if my mom even knew what I was doing,
She would have been horrified.
she would have been horrified because she would probably be racking up all of the hospital bills in her head. We had the driveway. I remember when I was like 9 or 10, that basically our driveway went from here and it went straight down and then it leveled out at the bottom. And then in the middle of our garage, we had this metal pole. And I created this game basically where I would go from the top of our driveway with my rollerblades on, rollerblade down this steep driveway, and then the only way to stop at the bottom is you had to grab onto the metal pole.
Oh gosh.
And then you had to swing around the metal pole a bunch of times. And
Yeah,
so
you're setting yourself up for damage right
oh
there.
yeah, never got injured doing this, but
That's good.
one time I talked to my next door neighbor into doing it with me. She was like 2 years older than me, Krista, and we're still good friends to this day. But I was like, Krista, you just have to go from the top. Just go from the top. It's gonna be fine.
Did she
like,
get injured?
Yep. I
Yep.
said, you have to grab the metal pole at the bottom. Sure enough, Krista comes down. She literally runs into the shelving unit that we have in the back of our garage. The whole shelving unit falls on top of her.
Oh my gosh.
And then did she end
And
up
I'm
in
like-
the hospital, or did she just
No, she was fine.
did she just limp home?
she
Just
limped
limped
home.
home.
But we used to do stuff like that. And I don't remember my mom ever,
Yeah.
my mom never even thought twice about
Right.
it.
Right. And I
Yeah.
didn't either. I mean, the boys were always concocting something, or, and
Yeah, you had 3 boys.
I remember, having friends come over and like the boys, especially when we lived in Houston. And so we had a 2-story, and then they would be leaping down they put the blocks on the stairs and then leap over them. And they're like, Beth, aren't you concerned? And I'm like, oh no, we're fine. We're good. We're all good.
We're all
but-
good.
Yes. But well, let's go back to just the differences between then and now, because one of the things that really did strike me and I'm kind of engineering this backwards. So it's not only your children being on devices, but parents being on devices,
Yeah.
because that really struck me, because when I wanted my mom's attention or the boys wanted my attention, I wasn't on a phone. I wasn't like checking my DMs. I wasn't looking, at my emails. I wasn't, scrolling on TikTok. I mean, I was either maybe making dinner, or, maybe I was sitting down, having a cup of coffee, maybe, catching a show, the Today Show in the morning or something like that. But I wasn't physically entangled in something. And so that's also, that must be
Yeah.
maybe kind of frustrating for children to get their parents' attention sometimes, because
Yeah.
I don't think they have their undivided attention. So, so it was really kind of a two-way street. So it's not only our children being on electronic devices, but it's also parents too. And so they're only, halfway paying attention
Yeah.
to their children or their children's questions. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But so let me just ask this, Chelsea. So how do you think you will handle electronic devices with baby D? And also too, you, on the flip side, then you being on devices as well. So
Mhm.
have you thought about this yet? I mean, you do have some time, but
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, we definitely, when she gets old enough, kind of like we talked about with the iPad, I think we'll obviously probably have one, but it's going to be like a special, situation, or I wouldn't allow her to use it when we're at dinner, or, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Things like that.
so you'll have some boundaries.
Maybe it'll be like a learning device where, we get to play
Mhm.
some learning games on this for like 30 minutes of the day.
Right.
Something like that. Rather than, we're going to watch Bluey while we're at dinner.
Mhm.
And then I think Andrew and I have talked about this, but as she gets older, honestly, I do agree that at a certain point in time that, once she gets to an age where she needs a phone, I mean, this sounds maybe horrible of us, but honestly, I think I'd give her a flip phone to be like, hey, you can call us
Right.
for an emergency, or, basically you just need this to call us if
Yeah.
you are here, or, dad forgot to pick you up or mom forgot to pick you up
Right.
and you need to get in contact with us, or you need to, something like that.
Right.
But I don't think that that she would need to have an iPhone or something that would allot her to get on social media until she gets older in age, you know, just because I do think that is, I don't know. I just don't think it's good.
Yeah.
I do think that there need to be parameters, boundaries, you know, whatever it is around the devices that you're going to allow your child to have. And not only when they're younger, but I also think that that spans even into the teenage years too, because, and we've had discussions about this before, of how detrimental it can be for teens to have access to social media and their mental health. And we briefly touched on this, and we can touch on it a little bit deeper, but mental health and how important that is with your children, but how it seems to be going downhill very, very quickly. And that's with the statistics of the children and young children, not just teenagers, but very young children that are now on antidepressants and are fearful and anxious ridden. And I think a lot of it has to do with our devices.
No, 100%. So, I mean, I think that's probably where we'll like teeter the line. And then, you know, I guess as far as me or Andrew using our device, I mean, hopefully maybe it'll be a good learning curve for us to not be on our device as much as we are, you know. I mean, I actually, I mean, I will notice like I'll scroll or, you know, do something like that. But I think in doing social media for a lot of the stuff that I do for work, sometimes I don't want to be on my phone.
I know, right?
That's the last thing.
I know, right?
Even last night, actually.
That's how I am.
We went to dinner and my phone actually died. So I couldn't be on my phone at all because it literally died. And so it was actually kind of enjoyable to just go to dinner and talk to people and not even worry about what's on my phone because
I know
because
you don't have it.
Yeah.
One of the things that I have actually started to do a little bit more, I mean, it's one thing to not physically have your phone, but I've actually physically just turned my phone off.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, I don't know, it was a kind of a freeing thing for me to do. It's like, it's not even putting it in my purse, or it's not even putting it in another room. It's like my phone is off. No one can contact me, and I can't just pick it up, you know, there again out of boredom or whatever it is, and, you know, just start aimlessly scrolling. So it's kind of, I felt very empowered, actually. I have to tell you, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, we've become
to
like
do that
too, as humans with technology and social media and text messages and emails, and you can have your email on your phone. It's like we become too available to people.
Yeah.
We have.
And
we absolutely
even with
have.
our jobs, you know, sometimes even with real estate, I'll have people text me at 10 p.m. at night. I don't respond back to them. You can text me all you want to at 10 p.m. at night, unless we're on the last day of due diligence and it is an emergency situation.
Yeah.
I will respond back to you tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Right.
Yeah, the loss of boundaries on all fronts, whether it's professional or even personal, it's disintegrated to a point that makes me long for the days when we just had landlines and payphones.
Right. Exactly.
Because honestly, did we ever feel like we were desperate and need to get in touch with someone unless it was like a super emergency?
Never.
Like there was never a feeling of like, oh my God, people can't reach me.
Never.
Really? I mean,
it's funny, and that's
our worst thing.
Yeah. So when I was thinking about this, and then as I said, reverse engineering it to, you know, when the boys were younger, I mean, if I were on the phone, it was attached to the wall in the kitchen, and they, you know, and they could be like hanging on my leg, you know, while I was standing there.
Yeah.
But it really did it. It struck me. It was like I was available to them 100% of the time because my attention wasn't focused on other things.
Yeah, we're distracted.
Which we are like so distracted, and I think it's very.
I agree.
I think that's just a really good point as a parent, and you know, and now that I'm going to be a grandmother, you're going to be an aunt, you know, to be very conscious of this. You know, I mean, it really does take a village to raise your child. It really does. It's not just an individual event or enterprise. I mean, you and Andrew will be, you know, it takes a team. I will tell you that, especially if you have more than one, because, you know, right now the two of you will outnumber Baby D, but then
I
That'll
think
pretty
That'll
soon
be
it'll-
man on man defense, and then
Yeah.
you have to go to zone if you have more
I
than
think
more than
Andrew
two.
was a little the couple that we went out to dinner with last night. Because anyways, they were talking about just, oh yeah, well, if you're planning on breastfeeding and doing this,
Mhm.
and they were like, just know, they were like, basically, you start the process and then you restart the process over again when they're a newborn.
Uh-huh.
She's like, by the time you get done cleaning
Mhm.
everything you need to clean,
Mhm.
then they're ready for their next feeding.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
the husband,
absolutely.
Pat, looked at Andrew and he's like, yeah, he
Yeah.
was like, basically, you just aren't going to sleep for the first like 3 or 4 months.
No.
And I think Andrew
Uh-huh.
finally had like a realization.
The light bulb went on.
The light
like,
bulb went
my
off.
life might change.
And I'm like, because the funny thing is that the only time that Andrew and I really have fought a lot, like we fought, and I would say there was like a day where I called my mom and I said, I think we're going to break up. And it was like one day, and we lived together in the townhome, and it was after we got Asher,
Mm-hmm.
and Asher just kept us up. It was just
Yeah.
because we were both tired and we were at each other's wits' end.
No.
And so I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, we just, and even the couple we went to dinner with last night, they're like, oh, we fought a lot in the early months. They're like,
Yeah.
just get ready.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
hopefully Asher prepared us for that maybe a little bit.
You
But-
think that and you can continue to think that we will let you have your delusions for as long
Let
as
me
you
have
can
my
hold on to them.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
I
Mag-
will say I do better on not getting sleep than Andrew does.
Mhm.
I think it's going to be a very eye-opening experience for him because
Yeah.
for me, I'm used to getting up early. I'm like I can function
Mhm.
on 3 or 4 hours of sleep. I've done it
Mhm.
before. I've taught Pure Barre. I've gone the entire day without a nap. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like
Right.
I'm prepared,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm even still a little nervous, but he's really not prepared. So
No, he needs to
we
sleep
shall
too.
see. We
He's a
shall
little-
see what happens.
He's a little cranky pants.
He is a little cranky pants
He
when he doesn't
is.
get to sleep.
Well, one thing that I have, I mean, because we are talking about parenting then and now, one thing that will not change and will never change, and we briefly had a discussion about this, but babies need undivided attention.
Yeah.
I mean, that is for sure. They need, I mean, they're the most helpless creatures in the entire world. And so, and they need to be fed. They need to be clean. They need to, have their diapers changed. And then you start the whole thing over. And it is a never ending schedule. It really is, that for especially the first 3 months, until they sleep through the night. And then,
Yeah.
things do start to get easier. But yes, they do need your undivided attention. So, and honestly, I'm here to say, because I can remember those, midnight feedings or, 3 a.m. and wanting to turn the TV on back in the day, and there's really nothing on, I mean, so it won't be a bad thing to have social media to distract
Yeah.
you. I mean, at times like that, when you are
Yeah.
you're like, okay,
But also with
here we are, 4 a.m. in the morning.
But with streaming TV, there's always something on.
Yeah.
That's
there's-
true. Nowadays there is, yes.
Which that's what
That's very
when
true.
we went to dinner last
Good
night.
point, Kelly. Good
They
point.
were like, watch the shows that you want to watch now when the
'Cause you'll be brain
baby's
dead.
younger, rather
Yeah.
than when they get to
Right.
be an age
Yeah.
where they're like, let's watch Moana. And I will
Uh-huh.
say that actually out of all of the things that I wouldn't say it makes me like nervous, but it's like when I go on a trip with someone that has a young toddler and it's what's on the TV is constantly like Bluey or
Mm-hmm.
Mickey Mouse or,
Mhm.
Moana. And I just think in my head, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be my life.
Mhm. It is.
This is going to be my life where I'm going to be,
Mhm.
I'm going to have Bluey
That's
on
right. All the time.
TV. And
Uh-huh.
that is actually what drives me more
Mhm.
crazy than anything
Yeah.
else.
We had Sesame Street and Barney and
Yeah.
Blue's Clues, and I'm trying to think what else.
There's
but
something
yes.
just when I watch those shows, it's like there's something that is slightly annoying about them. I'm like, what is this
Well,
that's annoying me?
You know what's good about streaming is that you can probably find all of the decades of Sesame Street,
Oh,
where
yeah.
before it got super digital and whatever cartoons they had on it were hand drawn, like
That's
the,
true.
the old stuff that's like so
Mm-hmm.
so much more engaging. I feel like than just digital
Yeah.
content. all of that original Sesame Street stuff is just so
Yeah.
great.
It's so
And
sweet.
I think it's also one of those
Wholesome.
things that as a parent who has to like be hearing what's going on, like
Yeah.
I feel like it's a lot more tolerable than a lot of like
Mhm.
the cartoon media
Yeah.
that's for kids that's current.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, that's true.
So I would say try to find all of that stuff, even if you have to buy like some kind of DVD set. Like
Mhm.
it would
Yeah.
be totally worth it to invest in because I think that
Yeah.
they're classic. They have worked for years, and people have grown up with them for decades. So I think
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's a lot more
No, for
tolerable.
sure.
Well, and a lot of music. We used to have. I would have these tapes. Like Raffi was a big uh, children's. Oh, he would like sing songs. The wheels on the bus go round and round. I mean, we would do a lot of that in
Yeah.
the car and things like that. But well, let me ask this though, because when I was pregnant with AJ, my first one, there were some books out there. There weren't a lot of books. I mean, we have so much information these days online and whatnot. And I just remember my mom referring to Dr. Spock. I mean, that was basically her Bible. Dr. Spock's book was still available when I was pregnant and a young mother. I mean, we had several books, but have you gone that route to learn about being, what pregnancy is all about, and then the first months of being a parent? Have you read any books or
Honestly, no.
no?
And I don't know if I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew and I talked about this, and Andrew's like, I don't know if I'm going to read any books. And I'm like, I don't know if I am either.
Mm-hmm.
I have, obviously been down a TikTok rabbit hole where it's like you ask in Google, is this normal? Blah, blah, blah. I've been down that rabbit hole.
Mhm.
And I guess I have learned quite a few things from that. There might be maybe like one or two books that maybe I decide to pick up later on.
Mhm.
I mean, because obviously I do like reading, but then it's like I do understand now because I don't think I quite understood when pregnant women were like, oh my God, it's like everyone's giving me all this advice and
Mhm.
it's unwanted. And not that it's not wanted, but I do get it now because there is a part of me where it's like everyone is giving you advice
Mhm.
and everyone has a comment and everyone, and then it does start to become a little overwhelming in the sense of like, okay, I know this is going to be hard,
Mhm.
but I don't need you to, tell me 24/7.
Right.
You know what books I
yeah.
always find fascinating are the ones that are more about like I can't even remember a specific title, but there was one, and I remember reading it like in the early 2000s, and it's something like, it's the stages of development of your baby.
Mhm.
So like it's told in a really beautiful
Mhm.
way, and it
Yeah.
has illustrations and things.
Mhm.
But that always really fascinated me because it was this way of like keeping track of your pregnancy, but also like being more cognizant of like what that little baby is doing while
Mhm.
you're kind of like dealing with whatever outside things that
Mhm.
you're dealing with.
Yeah.
I always really thought that and I like biology and science, so I thought that that book was always really fun and
Yeah.
interesting.
Mhm.
Was
Mhm.
just kind of getting a more specific idea of like what biological developments are happening during
Yeah.
which week and like
Yes.
the size
Right.
of the baby and all those things. I feel like that's just fascinating stuff.
Which
Yes.
they kind of have, like, I think I have an app now that it's like what to expect.
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
that's what the app is
What to
called.
expect when you're expecting. That was a
That was
book
a book.
back in the day.
Okay. So they've made it kind of into an app, which is probably the same
Mhm.
thing. And
Mhm.
essentially, basically, you enter in your due date and it'll tell you, like, if I pull up the app, it'll be like, you're 23 weeks and 3 days
Mhm.
pregnant. And it'll be like, your baby is the size of a carrot right now.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
if you scroll down, it gives you like a tip of the day for like that
Mhm.
stage in your pregnancy. And then if you scroll down further, there's a video
That's
of
pretty
this
cool.
woman that comes on and she'll be like, oh, did you know that your baby now is
Mhm.
doing this and
Yeah.
things like that.
That's really
fun.
cool. I
Yeah,
like
I
that.
like
Yeah.
that.
I do.
Yeah.
But I would. So, have you considered what type of parenting style you would have? I mean, have you thought about that at all? I mean, I know you baby D isn't here yet, but I mean, I'll just share some advice. I was very big on reading up. I mean, I had strong-willed children. I mean, my husband was 100% Persian. And if you know Middle Easterners, they do have this very stubborn streak in in their personalities. And all three of the boys were very strong-willed, so I would bone up on books like that. How to deal with a strong-willed child. I
Mhm.
also had boys. How to raise healthy boys. I also like those books that went into the somewhat what you were talking about, Kelly, pregnancy development, but then it would talk about, okay, what a 1 year old,
Mm.
from 0 to 1, what does that look like?
Mhm.
Yeah.
2 year olds, 3 year olds, because it really does go through their cognizant development or their cognitive development. And so that was also very good. And then also like the birth order book, I thought that was very interesting
Mm.
Oh
as
yeah.
well. Where because I think that there are very specific
Mhm.
traits in each.
Oh, for sure.
hmm
I feel like the first child always is the one that's probably your most serious and
Yes.
but the first child's probably as close as you could get to being an only child without being an only child.
Right.
I
Right.
think.
They're very
Mhm.
responsible. They're usually,
Yeah.
yes, very serious. And
I
the
always
middle
feel like the
children.
first child always looks more like the dad than the mom too. I don't know.
first-
Really?
Oh, really?
It's a phenomenon that has been noted
Interesting.
and
That's
talked
interesting.
about. But yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Ah.
The first child looks more like the dad, you said?
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean,
And-
AJ looks more like Matt.
And I look
than
more
me.
like my dad. And it's not
Mhm.
just like this, like or just. I mean, this is so
I
armchair
don't
of
know
me
if
to
I
even
don't
say
really look
this,
like my dad.
but there's like
No. Okay.
there's all kinds
My
of
biological dad.
armchair evidence out there, I guess, or maybe it's
Uh-huh.
not even so armchair, but just about evolution and why
Mhm.
this is a phenomenon
Interesting.
that is
Mhm.
noticeable,
Mhm.
even in our time.
That's
Yeah.
one thing that I'm
Women.
most curious about is what she's gonna look like. I'm like, what is she gonna
Mhm.
look like?
I know.
What hair color is she gonna have? What are her
know.
eyes gonna be? What is
Yeah.
Well, all
whose
babies
nose is
all
she gonna
babies
get?
have blue eyes, so it'll take a little bit to see their real
Yeah.
the real color. But I would recommend boning up on
Yeah.
parenting books, and pick a couple of authors that. I mean,
Yeah.
I had some favorites when I was younger. And Dr. Dobson was very big at the time, and he was a go-to
Yeah.
for me. I mean, he wrote the Strong-Willed Child book, and then Raising Healthy Boys. That was very important to me.
For those, I might do like more of an audio. I know I said I'm not an audiobook person, but maybe for that I might do more audio or listen to a podcast or because
yeah, and also too to start to develop your parenting style and be comfortable with that, and
Yeah.
and then also be comfortable that it's not going to look like your best friend's parenting style. Or I mean,
Andrew's already like, I'm going to be the favorite.
mhm.
You're going to
Yeah.
be the disciplined one.
That equates
Okay.
to spoiled.
I cannot wait. This is going to be a
I'm
grand
like, why
a
do you
grand adventure.
like why do you have to be the he's
I
like,
know.
I'm Asher's favorite. I'm like,
I know.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to have a new niece because I have 8 nieces and nephews, and
gosh.
I know.
only so baby D will be the 8th, but only the 3rd girl.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
exciting to have a new niece
Mhm.
because there's a lot of nephews already. So
Mhm. Well, all I know is that I get to spoil the baby rotten and let her have whatever she wants, and then hand her just right back to you and
baby
just say
D will be the
bye.
best dressed,
Bye.
best
Oh, for
dressed
sure.
Jalali. She'll be better dressed than me
For
because of
for sure. I'm
because
like
of BB.
I'm so excited. I'm very excited. So do you care about color schemes or things like that?
like color schemes for her wardrobe or
For wardrobe. So I have one friend, and her daughter
Oh.
is very specific about what colors that
Oh, really? Oh no.
she doesn't have she has 2 boys, but she's still very specific about the color scheme, which
Oh,
I thought
no.
was really.
that seems like a
Huh?
lot of wasted
I
energy.
know,
if you
I
ask
know,
me.
but yeah,
No,
it was
I
all very
just-
neutral.
there's
It
so
was all
many
very
other things
neutral.
Oh
to worry
no.
about.
The
Okay.
beige babies. No, I don't care.
Okay,
I've
Yay.
been buying
Good.
random like I'll go to Target and
I might have ignored your preferences anyway.
no, I don't care. Whatever's
good.
cute, it's fine.
hmm I know.
I do
mean-
have like a color scheme for her nursery. But I mean, that's just, decorating. Like you kind of want
Yeah.
some sort of a theme.
Mm-hmm.
But not for her outfits. No.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so going back to then and now, I mean, many things have changed in our environment, and especially, I think technology is really the big game changer in everything.
For sure.
But at its core, I mean, being a mom, being a dad is very much the same as it was 100 years ago as it is today. And you have very specific roles. I mean, as you know, as a mother, I mean, if you do choose to breastfeed, I mean, that's one thing Andrew will never be able to do. He'll be able to have a bottle and, bottle feed, things like that. But, but he won't be able to breastfeed. I mean, they're very specific roles, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
So some things are very much the same, and some things are very, very, very different. And I'm sure that you and Andrew have thought about this too, because just how expensive it is. I mean, it's always been expensive to raise a child, and they always have these graphs and charts and how much money you're going to be spending on your children and all of that. And I can totally attest to that. It really is. It's
Oh, that was the first thing Andrew thought of.
yes, was how expensive they're going to be.
I was pregnant. He was calculating, racking
I know.
up the cost in his
How
head.
much is this going to cost us by the end of the day? I know. How long?
He's already I feel like the first day, okay, well, private school, college. I'm like, my God, I'm literally like 4 weeks pregnant right now.
I know.
Calm down.
I know, but I mean, but you do think
I
about
know.
these things, and I do know that it really is very expensive these days to raise a child.
For sure.
And so we're also seeing families not have as many children because of that. I mean, there are many couples that are not even having children. I mean, all we have to take a look at is the birth rate in the United States. And I think when I was a young mom, we were still at like 3.2 children, something like that. And now it's like 1.7.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been cut in
Definitely.
half. And I do think that a lot of that has to do with expenses. But
Yeah.
Sure.
but I will just share this. As a mother, three boys, and I have three beautiful daughters-in-law. I mean, it was worth every penny. It was worth every sleepless night, every visit to the doctor or the emergency room, or whatever it was. Because we had a few injuries along the way too that had to be stitched up, or broken bones that needed to be set, or things like that.
Yeah.
I will share that was, I think it's the hardest job in the world because you have absolutely no preparation. I really do wish that they would have a few more courses. Parenting, I guess maybe there are more parenting courses, but anyway,
I don't even know. I don't know if you can ever be prepared.
You're never prepared.
Well, but
that's
what
maybe
about,
the
like,
good thing.
birthing classes and things like that? They still do Lamaze.
They still have
and that kind of
those.
stuff?
Yes.
Yeah.
They have.
I just mean, like, I think I will say, I mean, and I'm sure that you can probably attest to this, probably no matter how many classes, books you read, I feel like any parent says this, and obviously I know that me and Andrew will say this too. When they send us home with baby D on the first day, we're going to get home and we're going to be like, they literally sent 2 children home with a child. And I say this as a 35-year-old. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this?
I will attest to that, and then I'll wrap it up. But I'll never forget. I mean, I can still see Mac and I in we lived in El Paso, Texas, and we had a little teeny tiny ranch home. But I can remember vividly, AJ was 2 days old, and it was maybe like 10 o'clock at night, and I had just finished feeding him, and we just looked at each other, and we just like started to cry. It was like, we have no idea. We're college educated people. We have no idea what we're doing. It was like the scariest moment because we both, we were in it together, but yes, we felt terribly inadequate and completely unqualified. And it wasn't until like a week later that we flew home. My parents didn't come to see me that time, but we flew home. And I can tell you, I have never been so relieved. Mac has never been so relieved because we were under my parents' wing and under people who actually had raised children and kind of knew what they were doing. So so you will have a village to help you. So don't worry about that. But yeah, you will totally feel that. So all right, ladies. Well, I think we've covered a lot of topics on parenting then and now. So that concludes this segment, and stay tuned because we're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with New and Noteworthy. And we're back with my favorite segment, which is New and Noteworthy, and that's where Kelly, Chelsea, and I just bring, maybe it's a book, maybe it's a movie, maybe it's a product. I mean, we're just girlfriends just sharing what we discovered in the past week. Maybe it's even makeup. So Chelsea, I'm going to kick it off with you this week. So what do you have that's new or noteworthy? Maybe both.
So mine's new.
Mhm.
I think it's actually kind of noteworthy. But it's a movie. I have another movie.
Oh.
And it's called Blink Twice.
Mhm.
It stars Channing Tatum, and then Zoe Kravitz directed it.
I haven't even heard of
Wow.
that.
And well, Andrew and I just watched it, and it's a thriller horror movie.
Mhm.
Seemed to be on theme with.
I know.
that.
Didn't you have that last week?
Yeah. But
Ooh.
I will say this movie, it's basically, it's kind of one of those thriller horror movies where they take, a handful of people and they go to this island, and then something happens on the island. And, obviously I'm not going to go too much in detail if you want to watch it
Right.
with the storyline.
Mhm.
But it is definitely one of those movies where Andrew and I, the next day, without even talking to each other about this until we realized it, basically last night, Andrew goes, I've been thinking about that movie all day. And I said, I've been thinking about that movie all day.
Uh-huh.
And it is one of those thriller horror movies that kind of makes you like the whole day after you watch it, you're kind of going back and you're like, wait, okay, this happened. And like, how did they get to this? And oh, that's probably what that meant. And you're trying to like kind of calculate the pieces.
I like those kind of movie. I felt
Yeah.
that way about Triangle of Sadness,
Yeah.
which was an amazing movie. But yeah,
That
so it
was
sounds
kind of
good. I think I'll
similar.
probably watch this, even though I'm not into horror, but I do like the thriller aspect of it.
It's it's more thriller than
Mhm.
it is horror. I will say they do put a like a trigger warning at the very beginning because of some like sexual content in regards to like rape.
Mhm.
Oh, that doesn't bother me.
So and at first Andrew was like, why are they putting that? And then once you start to watch the
And
movie,
you understand.
you're like, I can see why they put that,
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Well, it sounds interesting. I'm definitely going to give it a go.
but it was
Okay.
definitely, it was
Is it
good.
scary? Like really scary? Or is it just more...
It's not really. It's more
Thriller-ish.
thriller. I
Okay.
would say it's more thriller.
So you really have to be paying attention to like all the red herrings and
Yeah, you have to.
breadcrumbs and things like that.
It's definitely, but it's one of those movies too where honestly, the whole movie, I didn't pick up my phone. Like I was actually watching it, paying attention the whole time. It captivated and like kept your attention.
Mhm.
That's great.
Okay.
So
Well,
yeah,
good. Well, it's on my list. Blink Twice. So, and Zoe Kravitz and Channing Tatum used to be engaged, but they recently broke up, which made me sad. So they,
yeah. I guess they were probably maybe still engaged when they
Mhm,
created
were
this.
doing
Then,
this, yeah.
Is she in it or just directed?
no, she's not in it. I don't think unless she's like someone that's like off, like extra. That I don't remember her being in it at all. So
Okay.
So it's
Yeah, I
her
think she's in
the
it.
first movie she's ever directed, though, right?
I think
potentially,
so.
I don't know.
I think
I
so.
was going to say I
It
don't
was
really
interesting
hope
to
they have-
see Channing Tatum in this role because normally you don't see
I
him. in a
know,
role
he's
like
not-
this.
mm-mm,
and he actually did a good job.
Did he?
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, this could potentially open up more doors for him to
Oh, good.
do
Good.
something different.
That's good. I'd like to see that guy do more stuff.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I always really
I
like him.
know. Yeah.
He's always so cute.
Okay, Kelly, what do you have on deck this week?
Okay, so I have a TV show that's called The Pit. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. It's
I did. I have
Yeah.
heard of it.
so because of legal issues, they can't like the comparison to ER is very clearly there because Noah Wiley is in this movie,
Mm-hmm.
and of course he was in ER. And then we also have a producer, John Wells, who was an executive producer on ER, and he was an executive producer on The West Wing. So you do it does have a little West Wing-ish
Mhm.
feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's a medical drama set in an ER or an ED in Pittsburgh, and it's really fun because it's a real time show. So every single episode is 1 hour of
I heard that.
Noah Wiley's day as the
Compared to 224 because of
Yeah.
the clock. I mean, obviously different genres, but just the clock ticking. So
yeah.
mhm.
So the real time
Mhm.
thing, which is kind of fun for an emergency department television show.
yeah,
I think one of the things though that you kind of miss out on are seeing any significant like character arcs. So I don't know how long this show is. I don't know if it's been renewed for a second season or not. But one of the things that you just get snippets of rather than just like a really nice kind of rounded out sense of are the characters themselves. But I do think if it gets to go on for longer than one season, which I hope it does because it's really good, that we will get a little bit more of, of the lives of our main characters.
Okay.
It's really, really good. It's a bit gory. So if you have a issue with surgical scenes or, that type of like
so it's very
body,
graphic like that.
it is, yeah. Yeah, but it doesn't, it's not so much so that it's a put off. Like if, you can kind of watch it with your hand in front of your eye if you need to. But interestingly, I've read online reviews and after watching it just to see if people who are actual doctors feel like it is accurately, and apparently it really is.
Okay.
Like it's really accurately portraying
Well, good.
an emergency room. So
Well, if you have your stamp of approval on it, because I had heard it was a very good show.
I really like
So
it.
it was on my radar screen. Is that on HBO?
It is. It's a Max show that every episode is Thursday at 9:00 Eastern.
Oh, so they're dropping it one at a time.
Yeah, HBO typically does that.
Okay.
So it's episodic.
Okay.
And it's kind of fun if you let a couple of them
Build up.
to watch a couple at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But it does really work very well as an episodic show because you kind of create over the week between episodes, you kind of create this it's like ER used to be. Like there was a certain amount of anticipation that comes along with it that I think is actually refreshing. So
okay, well, thank you. So, well, I have since we were talking about parenting today. And I was a big advocate of reading to the boys when they were little. Books are very important to me, and I love to read to them before they went to bed. So, and I just discovered, I grew up with Golden Books, and I just discovered that Golden Books has a commemorative set. So I already have it. So it's already on my shelf. So it's 75 years of Golden Books, and it's compiled into 15 different books, I believe. So just so cute because, I think I'll be curious to see, I guess I have to go back and see what books are actually in this set. But I would read the boys religiously when they were really little. Goodnight Moon, that's from Margaret Wise Brown, and that's just one of my favorite books. And it was just so interactive, and I can still.
I've been gifted that book 2 times already.
I'm sure you'll get at least 5 more.
So
of them.
cute. Pat the Bunny.
That wasn't a golden
I've
book,
been
though, was
gifted
it?
No, that's not a golden book.
Pat the
No.
Bunny 2 times. You gave me
that's
the
not
big
a golden.
version, and then
That's
someone
not a
gave me a
golden
small
book
version.
either. But I'm just thinking of the books that I used to read to boys. Because I'm not exactly sure. I have the commemorative set, but I'm not exactly sure what stories are there. But Richard Scarry was a favorite of mine, and yes, but Andrew loved Berenstain Bears. If I had to read another Berenstain Bear book, I was literally going to throw myself off, because that's all he ever wanted to read at a certain point when he was like 3, 4.
Yeah.
I'm like, here we go again. The Berenstain Bears are going on vacation or whatever it was. But anyway, so that's what I'm recommending is the commemorative set of Golden Books. Yeah, 75 years. So, and we will have those links down below. If you are watching on YouTube, we have all the links in the description box. So, okay, ladies. Well, that wraps up another episode of Message from Mom, where we're busting the myth that mothers-in-law aren't necessarily monsters-in-law.